Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Hello everyone. Sorry about that. Yeah, I had another meeting that was kind of taking a little bit over, but let me go ahead and move this over and share my screen. Let me make this um bigger, move to new window, increase the size of that. Let me share. I'm actually sharing on the computer too, because like I ended up updating my Mac. Okay, so let's go to the meeting notes. All right. And then I'm gonna move this over here. Okay. And then Vibhav, you're new. How are you doing?
Hi, uh, it's good to be here. I used to join these meetings like a few years ago,
Okay.
and since I've started contributing back to Tecton, I wanted to join these meetings again. So it's good
Awesome,
to be
awesome.
back.
Good to have you. So yeah, we've been pretty busy. Oh, we already have April 1st here. Okay, perfect. We've been pretty busy. So we have two SIGs now. I wasn't sure if you were aware. So we have two SIGs now. We have the specification SIG, which works on the protocol and specification, which is like the messaging, the events, etc. This implementation is trying to make that concrete. So it's the goal with making it usable for, open source as well as for companies. So that's what the purpose of this is. And the main agenda item for the last few weeks has been choosing a modeling language for the SDKs because the SDKs right now rely on JSON schema, and JSON schema is more of a validation language as opposed to a good way of modeling an API. So we're looking at something that for a language that's the goal of is to design APIs with to code generate from. And what we've landed on is async API, which is really, really nice because there's been some other tooling that I've been looking at that actually has support for async API. I didn't know it was actually that popular. So I think that was a good choice from us. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And then also a new pattern that we discussed yesterday, part of the spec sig, is that what we're going to try to do is whenever a new topic that comes out in the spec sig. So I'll give you an example. We have this new GitHub issue, which is highlighting um, basically trying to create a new event to kind of support Dora fully. And this one is the initial commit one. And the goal is to validate, or not really validate, but figure out how this would be used like in a real world setting. So that's kind of like what the purpose of the SIG is as well. So it's kind of like a two front. So the purpose of the specs and the events and how they're used in the real world, along with how do we go about implementing the infrastructure as well as giving support to the SDK, so, for open source to kind of give you a high level, if that makes sense.
Yep. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no worries, no worries. And so I'm gonna sign in real quick. So please put your name in. Oh, that's not the right place. Let me copy this, copy, paste, and then I'm just gonna copy this here, move it below. All right, sign in myself. All right, cool. And then I'll put you, because this is the first time you've been in this save because it's quite new. And then cool. So I wanted to first go over this GitHub issue because I know David had a lot of questions around it. I think it's a good idea to start thinking about how this potentially could work. So to kind of give a highlight, so this new event that's being proposed, or this new predicate, which is going to be part of actually it's new, not new, it's a new experimental CD event. which is especially specific for Dora, is this initial commit. And this initial commit is the goal of it is to highlight when a new project or feature has been started. So when I use project, I mean basically anything. So it could be a new feature, a new repository, et cetera, et cetera. So it covers all of that. So we'll just use a feature because that's the most standard use case. But whenever a new feature has been started, that means the very first commit of this project, like, maybe the first commit is the API schemas, right? Or maybe it's the maybe you're more test driven. It's like unit tests that just exist. So that would be the first commit that is then tracked by, or that is used by Dora to calculate one of the Dora metrics. So that's the purpose of this event. And then the goal here is to first move it to experimental. That way we can kind of play with it. But if it ends up working well, we will then move it to the branch initial commit is my thinking. So yeah. Or maybe I don't have that right, but that's how I kind of understood it. But I'll clarify with the DC. That's the Caesar here. If that was the goal. But there's a few questions. So I'll let David. So David, please kind of give your take on, or your questions that you had for the specific issue.
Yes. So hello, Viva. Yes, my issue is more related on the implementation than on the specification of the event itself, and mainly how this event, who will trigger this event, which tool, and under which condition. Because it's not on every commit. So I have a question of how to integrate this event, and if it's on the CI, how the CI, because you're working on Tecton, how we could do it. And so that's mainly the 2 or 3 first question are mainly about it. The third question is also on this topic, but mainly about what about teams that don't use branches. Some team work only on master. It's not short trunk based, but really every team's the full team work on master branch and use a feature flag and etc. It's one way to work. And the last point was let me, because I no longer have the ticket in front of me. This one maybe. Yes, thank you. But I will open on my side also.
Okay.
So you can. And my and yes, and the last point is it's one of the most interesting, and when I start thinking on it since several months, but didn't find a good solution, is how to create the correlation between a bunch of events. In the spec, we have links, chain ID, etc. But to fill them, it means that the system that generates the event know about previous maybe events, but today tools that trigger events didn't receive CD events. They are not consumer of CD events, much of them. So it means that we have the link services I see in another documentation. But how we can create this correlation to maybe create measure, because the purpose of this ticket is to measure the lead time. So it means for one initial commit, how I know what is the corresponding service deploy or artifact publish, depend of the case, because several commits, several features, so it means several initial commits could be part of the same artifact that then be deployed, etc., etc. And maybe sometimes we could have several artifacts that are joined to create one services that are deployed as part of one services. That several artifacts are grouped into one artifact, and then this artifact is published as a service, because our service event can only reference one artifact.
Right, right. Okay. So those are a lot of questions, and specifically that last one is actually quite large because it has to do with the link service, and we can go into that, but that I think would take kind of like the whole meeting, unfortunately, because it's because I'll like, well, it would take the whole meeting because I would like to show you like via diagrams like how it would work, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah, no, just to explain, I put on the ticket to allow us to also have a offline discussion.
yeah, yeah, I
As
was
we
gonna say
discussed last
like,
week, we should
it,
maybe start to use more offline discussion and
yeah,
instead
yeah,
of
definitely,
like it was
definitely.
in the past.
Yeah, so I think what we can do too is because I've been doing this a lot internally at Apple. The biggest thing with the link service is it does a lot. I mean, like how it interrelates with things. So it does a lot of connecting, right? And sometimes I get a lot of those questions like, oh, how does it work with fan in, fan out, et cetera, et cetera. I think because I've already answered those questions and I've given so many slide or keynote presentations on this and so many meetings, so many documents. I'm gonna let me ask my manager if I could transfer those over to open source and give a presentation as well, because that might help you, David, and anyone else that's interested in using the link service on how to kind of like connect all these pieces that seem disjoint. So let's leave that question open for now, but it is answered, but it's going to require me to pull all the docs, et cetera, from my side. So if you're okay kind of leaving that one open, but we
Yeah,
could
yes.
okay, awesome. But let's start with the first one. I agree that how is this event emitted, right? The branch initial commit or feature slash project, etc. Um, it's definitely open-ended. And I think there's definitely a lot of ways we can do this, right? But I think it ultimately needs to come from the end user. So one thing that the DC suggested was a pre-commit hook, which I think you said here, like a post-commit hook. Yeah, yeah, to make the difference, right? Um, and I think too, if we go that route, there needs to be some metadata inside of the commit that's CD events specific that says, hey, this is the initial commit for this project, right? I think that's the only way you can do it with a post commit hook. Otherwise, like you said, how does it distinguish between non-initial versus initial, right? If it's working off the same branch like main or master, right? So that is one way of doing it. Or the other way is when to use this specific commit, we're saying that people have to go follow a certain workflow. That's the other way, is to have people follow a very specific workflow. I don't like that way of doing it, but it might be the best way. So, but let me highlight a couple of these. So the first one is having metadata inside of a well, let me first do it like this. So
What you mean exactly by metadata? Because when I do a commit, I just put a comment, a title, and maybe a comment.
yeah, exactly. So having metadata inside of the commit message. So something like this, like, right? So let's see if I can do this inside of this. All right. So feature, maybe this is like add new API hello / hello, right? Then maybe at the very end of the footnote, we have something like something like CD events or something like that, where it has like extra, I don't know what this format would be, but it would be something like CD events, event type, maybe initial commit or something like that. I don't know what this looks like, but I'm just saying some sort of metadata, right? That would live in the commit that would be parsed by the technically would be either parsed by the pre or post commit hook and just sent directly, or the system that is ingesting this, the SCM event, would parse this and send the event itself. So there's two ways of where this happens. It could happen in either location, right? So, or a third location being like a webhook adapter, but that's what I'm thinking, is having some sort of metadata that lives in here that gets parsed and then does the action. And then this can become pretty powerful in that this would allow for what is it? Other CD events kind of like utilize this. But let me see if I don't think GitHub or GitHub or Git commit metadata. Is there a way to add metadata? Let me see. Git notes. Okay. So I guess we can use like something like Git notes or something like that. Yeah, or utilize can also utilize Git notes to add metadata, right? So there's multiple ways we can add metadata. I'm probably leaning more towards Git notes. That way, when you're submitting this commit, right, like you would just add a Git note saying that this is a CD event and that this is this metadata is this particular thing, right? Further, what we can do is we can also add a special Git command. So I don't know if you're familiar, but if you have like, let's say inside of let's say you have user local bin git CD event, right? You can use this to then run the command git CD event and then add whatever flags and it do whatever it needs to do. So that's another way of kind of handling that, but that puts it all in the end user, right? So yeah, that would be kind of like the way of doing the metadata is either having the user put in the metadata themselves. Well, they would need to put in the metadata, otherwise the service that's ingesting it or the thing that's parsing this wouldn't know that this is the initial commit. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking. What do you think about that, Vib or David?
About using create a Git subcommand, it's maybe
No. I just meant just like first let's start with like at the very top, just like
yes,
having the
but
metadata.
I will go in the reverse order.
Oh, reverse. Okay. Here.
So with the issue with the Git command and maybe also with Git notes is it works for developers that are using the command line, but maybe not for users that are using Git integration into their IDE or editor or some high-level tools, lazy Git
Okay.
or
Issues
whatever.
with Git notes and Git.
But if it's part of the comment like GitHub use also this approach for fixes
Yeah.
for some stuff. It could be a solution. So it answers the question how to do the distinction between between commits that we want that should trigger the initial commit and other, but we still have one of the question is who will trigger it. It means that it will be triggered by the CI or local tools, and it means in this case that these local tools, because David mentioned that it should
Or
be
who sends the event, you mean, right?
yes, because this as I'm working on a tool that send events, I could say it's not just, it could be more complex than just doing a curl command, I could say, because we need
Yeah.
authorization, maybe signature, etc.
So yeah, there's definitely multiple ways that this could be sent. This could be sent by the Git command itself, but I don't like that. What I would like is I would like the SCM event to do the parsing or sorry, not the event, the SCM system, whether that is the SCM system itself or some sort of like webhook adapter. Either of those systems would do the parsing and then would send the event. I don't think the user should send the event. I feel like that could be very dangerous for one, and then would require like authorization, authentication. So users could send the event, but not a good approach due to authentication / authorization. So that's kind of like why I don't think users should do it. I'll leaning more towards yeah, like the SEM event or SEM service and or some webhook adapter that is used by the SEM service or that is integrated with the SEM service. So these are the two approaches that I would think. So either you would have users send it, which I'm not a fan of, or the SEM service would do the parsing, or the webhook adapter that is integrated with the SEM service would do the parsing of this metadata to then send the event.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. The way today with my webhook, I can
You
do.
could do this, right? Okay, awesome. And then let's go back because you had okay, this one I think is interesting. So I think this is answered by
Yes.
utilizing things like this. So I think we're okay there. Um
Maybe
cannot be
you should, instead of putting the answer in the meeting notes, you copy paste. If you can
Yeah,
copy
yeah.
paste.
I'll copy and paste them after this meeting.
Okay.
I just want to capture everything in here because I actually when I go back to like my internal docs and whatnot, like I usually take things from these
Okay.
as opposed to GitHub issues. So this is easier for me. But yeah, I'll definitely paste it in there.
But anyway, if we go to the mark into the comment into using the git comment with a special comment, maybe as part of the specification, we should suggest this comment or metadata,
Yes.
so every tools will use can detect the same.
Standardize on it. Yeah,
Yes.
agreed. I just accidentally that is integrated. Okay, service. Okay, so what we need to do is you just go for the next spec sig or for the next ish spec sig, we need to standardize on this metadata format. Okay, I like that. So in the spec sig, I will come up with a small proposal on this. I'll work with Didisi because he's the initial creator of of this event, and we can kind of like synchronize on what the format should be. But like we want the format to be simple but also easy to use, parse. Some common structure or some common encoding that that every language already has by default, whether that's JSON or YAML. uh yeah, I'm probably YAML might make sense because it's easier to read inside of a commit, to be honest. So maybe something like this. Let me see. Yeah, I actually like that. Maybe event type, something like this, initial commit or something, we'll figure it out. But yeah, I like something like this. And then maybe it's like, separated like that or something. Okay. I like that. So that will be the next. Well, I plan on doing a presentation next week in the spec sig, but that can be pushed out actually to the following week. It might be better. So okay, we'll play it by ear though. But yeah, I definitely think we should standardize on that in the specification. And then tools that are ingesting this can expect it to be in a certain format. So and then okay, so how do you mention correlating between this and the fall? Oh, this is the links. Yeah. So links, like I said, links is pretty complicated. But the links actually, when I was talking, so when ticketing events was introduced, I posed the same question because when a ticket is created, it's very detached from everything, right? Like it's detached from like the Git commits, it's detached, yeah, basically by everything, right? So one thing that I suggested was something very similar to this. So we might be able to use this to add the extra metadata to, say that it's tied to um, this ticket, this, chain ID, or this, or maybe if no chain ID is specified, then it will just it'll just create a new chain basically. So that's kind of like how the link service works, is if no chain ID is specified on on an event that was consumed and sent, it will generate one on sending. So that's how that works. So, and if you want to relate to any previous event or any sort of artifact, maybe that could be defined inside of this metadata, because that's initially what I was thinking, and we could use that like this tool as well. It would be just like get CD event, maybe link, right? And then have some sort of special commands is what I'm thinking.
It could be complicated. It could introduce more works for existing user, because some at least some of the issue tracker I know can be integrated with SCM, and they detect the relation between tickets and SCM, some by looking at a special ticket number in the description of the pull request, or a ticket number in the title of a commit, and they auto detect this. I know that Jira work like this. I guess GitHub also. When you mention a ticket into your commit, you can say close, fix, related, etc. So if the developer have to do two action because the ticket is related, should be linked between two systems, it's maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like if integrations can handle it, that's where it will happen. But I'm saying like worst case scenario, basically. Like if the worst case, and then also on top of that, the integrating tools can also potentially use like the CLI that we provide as well, right? So that kind of like helps link things together. But yeah, like I said, like I think that problem is like I said, if the integration already exists between like, GitHub, like you said, like with like fixes, then that is already solved, because then we can just go with like the ticket. It could just reference the ticket and then create that causal link right there. And like I said, like when the first ticket event is sent, right, that will automatically create a chain ID, because the ticket's like usually the very starting point of anything. So that's when the chain ID is created. And then what happens is when you create a pull request, there's no chain ID, right? But that will create a chain ID. However, once you reference once you reference the ticket, it will adapt, or it will alias that chain ID that it has to the chain ID that is to the ticket. So basically they become equivalent, if you will, if that makes sense.
Who do this alias?
This is the whole link service. And so basically what happens is when you're sending things to the link service, like this is a complicated system, but once you send things to the link service and it sees that that the ticket is related to the pull request, it will automatically create that alias for you.
Okay. Yeah, the link service is a beast to explore.
It is going to be, it's basically tracing. It's like tracing, except for like a very distributed, well, tracing is distributed. So it's basically going to be tracing, and tracing is not simple. So yes, but like I said, but because tracing has already kind of solved this problem, and instead of being that granular, we just need that.
No, distributed. I'm practice a lot at distributed tracing,
Yeah.
With open tracing and now open telemetry. And what is common and what, in my opinion, it could not be translate today is today to have open telemetry tracing. You have this context ID. I will name
Yep.
in this way, and this context is passed through all the chain. So it means that if anyone in the chain don't transfer the context ID, the chain is broken. In our case, it's always broken because none of the intermediate system take as input the context ID and transfer this context ID to every output.
Right. But the difference, I think this is why it doesn't map 100% one-to-one with like tracing. One, for that reason right there, but also the events themselves are related in some way or another, right? So because the events are related, like, for instance, the consumers are always relating to a previous event, they know which chain ID to take. Right. So the problem is connecting the first couple, which is like the SCM event to the ticket, where they're completely detached from one another. But once you connect those, they'll all trickle down and connect with one another because that's just how an event bus works with CD events. So that I think is fine. And like I said, once I have the presentation, if I get the okay, which I'm pretty sure I will give a presentation and it has like diagrams and GIFs that kind of show like how the connections happen. It'll be a lot more clear because right now I'm like kind of like hand waving it, but like I think once I give the images where it's like connecting things like in a GIF where you see it like the event being sent, event being consumed, then it pointing back, and then I think it'll be much more clear. But yeah, but that's kind of like the high level of it, and hopefully it makes sense.
Okay, I will wait for your presentation. So
Yeah. Because like I said, it is, and I'm not saying it's simple because you're right. It is going to be a beast of a service. One, not only does it need to make these attachments between disjoint systems, but it also needs to be highly scalable, right? Because it's taking in every single CD event, right? So it needs to be very, very scalable as well. So yeah, but like I said, this is a project that hopefully I will start. And I'm going to take some inspiration from open telemetry, but also kind of learn from some of their mistakes as well is my goal. So but with that said, I can rely on everyone's expertise, and like you said, David, since you already have some familiarity with tracing as well, like hopefully you'll be able to contribute as well.
to be honest, the link service and how to create this connection is also part of the project I'm currently working on.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
My first step is to collect data, to have the database of evidence and some dashboard, but I would like to display in the dashboard the link between events and stuff.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and we'll need to figure out like what a good language is for the link service. And like I said, because it needs to be a beast, we need to make sure that the language that we choose is highly scalable. So that means no interpreted languages, basically. So we can't make the link service Python, for example. So yeah. But I think there's a lot of promise there. A lot of work that still needs to be done. And hopefully, like I said, I'll ask the DC. I'll make that my because I have a one-on-one here in a couple hours, and I can ask them right then and there. But let me copy and paste this real quick. Here, and then from the 0 through 04, is it 01 now? I think what is today?
Yes.
Okay, 01, 25 implementation SIG. Answering of questions. Oops. What did I just do? Oh, did not copy. Oh my God, why did I not copy? Oh, missed it. All right. All right, and then let's just do this. And then I think this should look nice. Oh, because of this, I think. Wait, why did it? Okay, so it's messing this up. That's annoying. I didn't know you could not.
You can, but
Okay. Maybe it's messing up on this. No, it's not messing up on that.
You miss the backcut, the triple backcut
Oh, where is it? I am not.
feature. As you put in the meeting notes, it was okay.
Yeah, but why is this one in triple back code? That's what I'm confused on.
Because there is a four-space indentation. So when you have four-space
Oh,
indentation,
gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
it's like
I'll just do this then. Yeah. Bum, 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 bum. Let's see. Okay, that should be fine. All right. All right, that should be good. Okay, cool. All right, and then that was pretty much that. And then in terms of, all right, so we're gonna kind of move over now. So going back to async, so async API updates. Were you able to make any progress on that, David, like with testing or anything?
no progress and more questions because during the past 2 weeks we discussed also a lot about the custom events, etc.
Right.
And we also say maybe we have to 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 clarify our goals and in terms of support and what SDK should do and maybe not do. So it's also change maybe there is a mismatch with what I try to start with the async API. And maybe this discussion could also drive to not generate the SDK as we would like to do 3 months ago when we started, but maybe more focus on what you did and just using Picker or something similar to generate the schema. And it's one possibility, and maybe the SDK should not validate the subject. For example, the SDK will validate the context because it's always the same, could validate some subtype, and then it will be the responsibility of the user to combine them to maybe validate any subject, etc., to be compliant with custom and etc. And maybe one of the possibility is, as you mentioned also a few months ago, is not to have a memory model that is valid, as I prefer, statically valid and at compile time, but make some validation at runtime during serialization or deserialization using a schema.
Yeah, I think for custom events, so I have a very different, I'm thinking about it, I think really different than you, David, on how this would work. So I wonder if I should do like a prototype on how I think this should work, because what I was thinking is we would still do modeling, right? And custom events would just need to adhere to like some sort of like rules, basically, is what I was thinking. And the SDKs themselves would not do any validation for custom events except for maybe if it follows like some sort of interface, like maybe the interface is like validate CD events or something like that, then the SDK could call that when it's consuming it or sending it. But I imagine you should just be able to pass it, and then the serializer should just rely on any sort of serialization techniques that they do, whether that's through reflection or what. I imagine it has to do with reflection. I'm not sure how Rust handles that, so I'm a little iffy on that.
No reflection. It's a
Oh,
static.
really?
No static compile time. It's compile time Rust. Only compile time.
Oh, well, how does it? Oh, does it actually? Well, how does it get the information of the type? Like, how does it know to how does it serialize? Maybe what I need to do first, David, before I answer this, it sounds like I need to go learn Rust a little bit. Just like just a little bit, just do a little bit of serialization, because I think whenever I'm talking to you, I feel like there's a disconnect because of what you know from Rust and the lack of knowledge I know from Rust. I think that's where the disconnect is. So let me take this Friday to do a little bit of learning a little bit about serialization and deserialization. And and then Vib would love to contribute to the Rust SDK. So yeah, you put a link here, David. More help, the better.
Yes. In Rust, for serialization, there is a de facto standard library, and nearly everybody use it. There are some other interpretation, but CRD for serialization, deserialization is de facto standard for serialization in Rust.
Okay. So what I will do, I'll talk to you offline, David. I'll probably message you on Friday, and I'll play around with Rust, because I think it's very clear at this point is that you're coming from a very specific handling of a language that I'm not familiar with, which has more restrictions that I'm used to. I mean, I come from a C background, but C should handle this. So, it's surprised that Rust is a little bit different, but I'm curious to see what the differences are. So yeah. Okay, so let me play around with it on Friday, and I'll get back to you. Oh, I'll message you on Friday, and then we could talk a little bit, because I think this is going to really pave the way for this discussion, is understanding the limitations of serialization. Well, not the limitations, just how Rust does serialization, right? So let me do that, and let's table the discussion on async API for now, and then in the next 2 weeks we will then continue on this once I know a little bit more about Rust. Does that work for you, David?
Yes. When I say no reflection, I mean you cannot like in Java or maybe some other language, or Python, etc. Say what is your type. I call this method if this method exists at runtime, etc.
Yeah.
That's what I say when I say reflection doesn't exist.
Right. So it's very, I should have guessed. So it's very similar to C, because C is very similar to no reflection, right? And it's literally it's taking the a function that you provide and does a serial. Okay, so it sounds very similar to that. Interesting. Okay. Let me research it, because like I said, I think it's my lack of knowledge, and I think that's the why that me and you, when we talk about this, there's a disconnect that I'm not understanding. And I think in order for me to really answer some of these async API questions, I need to be at least familiar with how serialization is working. And and if it is working like what you're suggesting, then yeah, custom events is definitely going to be problematic for the Rust event or Rust language. But we'll see. Let me get more information, and then we can have this discussion both offline as well as in the next 2 weeks.
No problem.
Let me.
But it joined also the rules that we one of the goals. I don't know if it's you or Andrea that should work on it. It's to collect what we want that every SDK which rules and which behavior we want we want every SDK to provide.
Yep.
What is
So I've done this
what,
before at AWS, so I'll probably take this on because I'm very familiar with this problem space. But the problem with AWS when I was there was no Rust SDK. So, so yeah, like I said, I need to do a little bit of research, but I agree. SDK should be very, very similar. The more differences you have, causes people to have causes a hardship when they're trying to transfer between SDKs, or like if they want to use a different SDK for a very specific use case, like for instance Python, right? Like maybe they have a really quick and easy thing that they want to do. They want to use Python, but if it's vastly different in Rust, it's going to be quite the headache, especially if the names are different, if the methods are different or functions are different, that's just problematic for the end user. So I completely agree. And
I didn't talk about this and the syntax. I more talk about what the SDK should provide in terms of high level.
like features, basically.
Yes, the feature should cloud events conversion into cloud events is mandatory.
I
or
also
not.
am very opinionated on this. So yeah, I agree.
Custom event should be support or no? Should we validate and parse only, or should we
Yep.
map, etc.? We should be clear on
Yeah.
on
And I think that's something that we can do at this implementation SIG as well. So let's actually write that because that's a pretty big topic. SDK feature parity. Need to create.
We also several times mentioned how to validate. It means that we should use the same the conformance folder
Yeah.
to validate. Should SDK support multiple version of CD events or not, etc.
Okay. Yeah, I like these questions. But yeah, let me create this doc. I'm very opinionated because in today's SDK, I'm going to be honest, like I don't like the usage of it. I hate the fact that I have to convert something to a CD event and then convert it to a cloud event and then send the event using the cloud event SDK. Like that should all be handled by the CD events SDK. Like I really don't like how it's done today. So I don't know if your SDK, that's how the Rust SDK does it, but I know that's how the Go SDK does it and the Java SDK, which I'm not a big fan of. But yeah, I agree. So let me create this doc. I'm pretty booked out with all the stuff I need to do.
Yeah.
So let's first get the other items that I talked about, which is the links, discussion, presentation, plus the presentation that I'm going to do for just like the goals of CD events, which is going to be hopefully next week, but worst case 2 weeks from now. And kind of start there, and then we'll circle back to this feature parity let's circle back in May 1st-ish. How do you feel about that?
Yes.
Okay, works for me then.
I'm also a lot of works.
Okay, yeah, you and me both. Okay, well, was there anything else that anyone wanted to mention? Because if not, we can call it early. Let's see here.
No, just to mention that in 2 weeks, I hope for these meetings, yes, the implementation meeting, maybe I will do a quick demo of what I provide on CDVs.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good. All right. Well, it was great. It was a good meeting. Talked about a lot. And welcome again, Vib. It was glad to have you here. And if you want to contribute to the Rust SDK, I mean, we're always looking for maintainers. So if you are interested in any of the SDKs, please let me, Andrea, David know, and we'll get you the path to becoming contributor, and would love to have you be part of the open source project. So yeah, thanks again, Vib. And again, always, David, really appreciate all your insights, and yeah, we'll see each other again next week, and then this SIG will be 2 weeks from today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had something to mention. I
Sure.
already have access to the organization, so I can like create like a new repo even if I wanted to.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great.
Yeah, just wanted to like put that out. Yeah.
Okay,
But thank you.
awesome. All right, yeah, that's good to know because that means like you can already start maintaining. So that's fantastic. So yeah, please go ahead, and if you feel up to it, look at right now we're missing maintainers for the Java SDK. So if that's some language that you're familiar with, please take a look. But yeah, we love any help that we can get. And again, thank you for attending, Vib, and we enjoy having you here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone. You guys have a good week.
Bye.